Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Car Chat podcast. And with me today, coming back on the podcast for the second time, is Mr. Oli Webb. Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. I was having a dig back to see when we did our first podcast, and it was pretty much now,
Was it?
but a year
We
ago.
were around and kicking.
Yeah, just sort of the end of January, I think, before we knew what was happening
God, yeah.
with all of this
Yeah,
stuff.
that's right. In London, yeah.
But yeah, so can you just give the listeners a tiny little summary of sort of what you do or who you are and what you do?
So main career is motorsport racing. Le Mans racer, have been for quite a few years now. And then on the side, commentary for IndyCar with BT Sport and some other races, some stunt driving for films, and precision driver. So basically anything that involves a car that I can get my hands on.
I remember at the end of the last podcast, we basically wrapped up the podcast. And then I was like, oh, what have you done this week? And you were like, oh, I was doing some stunt driving. I was like, what? I did not know that you did some stunt driving. And I was like, well, this has definitely got to come up in the next podcast because I wanted to know all about it. And I'm sure the listeners will want to know a bit about it. So yeah, like stunt driving and working on films and precision driving, I guess all comes under one sort of banner, I guess.
Yeah, it's a mix of, it can be an advert for an example, let's say where I've done something with Braun shavers and they're trying to compare how quickly you can change a shaver head to a pit stop, and all of a sudden they're hiring a driver to do a Formula 3 car like burnout, and anything from that to a film like a Mission Impossible or a Transformers or something like that. And it is fun, and it sounds maybe a little bit more glamorous than it is. 90% of the time you're doing something quite mundane. But obviously the one-off fun days where you are kind of J-turning down a set of stairs and crashing into the side of a wall, then it's kind of exciting. But the thing I never realized when I got into the stunt driving stuff was, and ignorantly so, is when you watch, you assume let's say two cars in a chase are the two stunt drivers, but then you realize, hang on a minute, every single car in that scene has got to be a stunt driver. So sometimes you can just be driving a black cab at 20 mile an hour on the side of the road.
Yeah, that was something when we talked about it. It was like I hadn't thought about that at all in the slightest. That you look at all of these scenes, whether it's your James Bond movie or whatever, and you might have your sort of three main cars battling it out through the streets, but then is literally every other car got someone like yourself in?
Yeah, I say there's a key, for instance, for the mission films, we have, let's say, like a key group of on the really focused scenes of maybe 6, and then on the bigger scenes maybe 20. But then there is, let's say, when we've done a London Bridge scene or something, there might be 50 drivers, some of which won't necessarily be stunt drivers, but they'll just be drivers who are insured to drive on set and do the scene. But for all intents and purposes, any car that comes near what we call the hero car, let's say Tom Cruise's car, and he's doing the driving, they have to be a precision driver in case he gets one of his turns wrong and he's about to crash into an expensive car. They've got to suddenly move out the way and know when to cut. So it's it is really interesting, and it's amazing how many actual people you need and the time and effort that goes into it because of that.
It must be mad working on and part of a film like a Mission Impossible film, because how many people are involved in something like that? Like it's got to be like hundreds or something.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, and we just get kind of dropped in for the specific stunts that involve cars, because obviously, yes, a lot of these action movies have car involvement, so maybe James Bond is a little bit more focused, and always has been with his heritage. But Mission Impossible, really, when you look back at it, there's the odd car chase scene, but really it's not about cars, that film. It's more about missions. So it'll be planes and bikes sometimes. And all this. There might only be a few car scenes. So we're dropped into a storyline generally we're not told about because we can't know too much.
Right.
In a scene where you only get told what's happening in that scene. And for instance, I think Mission Impossible 6, the last one, we did a scene that was maybe 200 people, including actors and stunt personnel, which included 2 helicopters in the sky, closing down London Bridge at 4 p.m. on a Thursday.
Wow.
Which I still to this date don't understand why it had to be at such a peak time, why it can't be like, I don't know, 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning where they can't incorporate it in. And that scene cost a lot of money, and we had to do it 3 times. It never even went in the film.
Oh, wow.
So it just goes to show the amount of effort they put into every second that you see of a film like that.
Yeah, it's so mad. And you compare that stuff to like what we see a lot of, and you see a lot of, it's like YouTubers nowadays just running around.
Yeah, yeah.
Pointing a camera at yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the raw and to a point. I know it's edited, but there's the raw and the unedited YouTube-ish world, and then obviously there's the highly edited and highly scripted style of Hollywood, and then there's the point where it crosses over. So it's that the media from both ends of the scale completely integrates now.
I've always found it amazing, like how things ramp up massively with only a little bit of extra sort of requirements. So you have your person running around with a phone recording, that's step one. Then you might have a YouTuber type person that's got an SLR or whatever. And then I remember getting asked just a quote for a commercial photo shoot. So, and it was just like leveling it up, and they're like, oh, we'd quite like to have the clients on set, and then you want more gear and you want more screens. And then you go from like you and the person you're taking a picture of and whatever the subject to like 8 people.
Yeah.
And the budget just goes like 10 times, and there's pretty much zero perceivable difference between the output. It's just sometimes they want to do it properly / more properly.
Yeah.
And then you've just got you've got a burger van. You're like, why have we got a burger van?
I mean, that's what's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I don't get me wrong. I understand the quality difference and I see it, but for me, that those lines are really blending now, and without naming any brands, and like you're describing, you've been through the same thing. Without naming any brands, I've done some really high profile brand commercials that can maybe like short clip commercials for social rather than TV use. They're very well done, and you wouldn't have an idea if it's a 50-man crew or a 2-man crew, and they cost kind of like 5 to 10K max. And then you go to like Hollywood, and for instance, that scene that didn't get put in that film, each take was 200K per take, and they didn't put it in the film, and they did 3 takes. And you watch the outcome of that, because we got to see the final edit, because it never went in the film, that particular part, although the other parts we did go in the film. We just asked to see it, and we looked at it and we thought, I mean, that's amazing, but that's 200K is a lot of money for that 20 seconds over that bridge. And like you said, it just ramps up an insane amount when you get to those kind of films.
It's mad. But then you do look at them, and I finally upgraded my 1080p TV to a 4K TV this Christmas. And you look at these things, or in the cinema, and you're like, okay, wow. Like, I have a bit of an understanding of what went into making this scene, and that is absolutely mental.
Yeah, I guess it's in a way, it's just like Formula One teams finding that last 100th on the track,
exactly.
Right? Finding the first 5 seconds might cost you a couple of million, but it's another 100 million for the last 10th of a second. And that's kind of what it's like in film industry, I guess.
Yeah, and annoyingly, that's the one that counts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you got any sort of standout stunt driving moments that you can tell us about?
There was one moment, I can't say what film and what stunt director, but there was one film where we only had 1 take to do it. And we were all in bog standard cars. It was a desert style scene. And just before we went to go for action, they were saying on the radio, oh, and by the way, guys, this is the first time we were told we only had 1 take at this. We've only got 1 take at this, so no one stall. Everyone's in a manual. All of a sudden, it's like all of us just forgot how to use a manual car. And someone stalled, and they were fired on the spot, which I thought was brutal. It was the first time I was working with this particular stunt director. But I felt really bad for that particular driver, who's an amazing driver. But all of a sudden, your leg's shaking because you realise the whole Hollywood film on this scene is set on you not stalling this little like deep desert buggy type thing. That stood out to me because that was one of the earlier ones I did. What was one of the other ones? Probably having a coffee with Chris Hemsworth in the last Men in Black film. That was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Waiting for some cars to be repaired that we crashed through London. But yeah, the rest of them, you're normally just with your stunt crew, and kind of the talent get kept quite separate to us. Tom Cruise does all his own stunts, very approachable character on the sets. I've not been on the last 7 sets. I was meant to be in Rome for 3 months doing some stunt driving for the last Mission Impossible 7. But unfortunately, that was just as it hit. So it was the second week of March last year.
Yeah.
When we were all due to fly to Rome. The crew were already there, Tom was already there, and then the stunt drivers were about to come, and then they called it all off.
Wow.
It's now finished. But unfortunately, I wasn't part of that one, because when it did restart, it was during Le Mans in the summer.
Yeah, where you were there. But
yeah,
no one else was there.
So that was good.
How was it this year?
It was much more competitive for our car, which was good in terms of, from the selfish side of things, how it was for us. We had a rear wing failure at, 14 hours in or something in the middle of the night with my teammate, with Bruno Spengler. So that ended our race. So that was a bit unfortunate. But as a whole, it was very well organised. The fact that we were still able to do it. It was very, very strict. So there was no IndyCar style, a few people allowed in this grandstand and a few there. It was completely closed off, almost the whole town effectively. But it was just amazing to be there. It was very strange. It felt like a super extended test week. Normally we fly in the Saturday the week before, and there's all sorts that goes on before you even step in the car. Instead, we were flying in on a Wednesday, and then we're in the car. They condensed all of the practice and qualifying sessions. So Thursday 8 a.m. until Thursday midnight, we were basically in the car testing and qualifying, which meant by the time the race came, we were pretty screwed. But yeah, then the race went ahead. But it was strange. It was strange on the starting grid without any crowds in the audience.
Yeah, and I heard, I can't remember where I heard it. Someone was talking about how just the normal Le Mans build-up has all this stuff going on before it starts, whereas this year there was just none of that stuff.
No drivers' parade, no scrutineering in the town, no media day, no extra day of testing that got cancelled as well. So yeah, it was super, super strange.
And so you were racing for Bicol.
Bicolors, yeah.
In LMP1.
Yeah.
When a rear wing fails, where did it fail? Did it fail in a straight line or
luckily, no. So it failed in a corner, but it failed in a corner that's not too bad. So it failed on the Bugatti circuit before you go on to effectively the road course style. Okay. So coming through the Dunlop chicane, so turns 3 and 4, coming down the hill before you hang a left. So just as you're coming down that hill, it's about 4th gear, maybe 150 mile an hour. So it's still quick. And it just broke in the middle as he was turning down that hill, and he went through the grass, through the gravel trap, and then just tapped the wall, but hard enough that it was repairable, and it was repaired pretty quick. But the team manager made the right call, because we as drivers sometimes make the wrong call, which is that we wanted to get back in.
Yeah.
But because the rear wing was so badly hurt when we finally got it back from the wall impact, that is, not being able to determine what the failure is means you stick another one on. Will it happen again?
Yeah.
That's one corner away from Tete Rouge, which is almost flat in an LMP1 car and is more like 180 mile an hour apex speed. Yeah. And there's a wall right there, and that's where Andre Simonsen passed away, and a couple of other drivers have obviously had some bad accidents. So we didn't want to go and risk it.
No. And yeah, like you said, you ask the drivers want to get in the car.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we make silly decisions. I think drivers are safer than they used to be back in the day. We make better decisions now, whether it's people retiring at the right times when they've had a bad accident, like Dario had his bad accident in IndyCar and decided, I've been extremely successful enough, I'll call it quits here, taking doctor suggestions, whether it's that to, being in the middle of a race like we were then, to just think, if this happens at Porsche curves or Tete Rouge, we won't be so lucky. So yeah, best just to sit back and watch the rest of it.
Have you found your mindset has changed because you've got a baby on the way?
Yes, I think so. I mean, she's not here. She will be in a couple of days. But I think more so when she's actually here. Right now, I'm being a little bit more cautious with stuff I do. But I think, until she's maybe grown up and self-sufficient, then maybe I'll start being riskier again.
But I guess I imagine it's one of those things you don't know. You don't know until that moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure I will be. I'll definitely be around her extremely cautious. Will it affect the in the moment overtake decisions? I'd like to say no. Hopefully that's not a reflection on me as a parent, but I don't think it will change how I will race. It might change a stunt driving job, for instance. It might change, hey, we need you to drive the car off the cliff this time. I might say no. But let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I guess presumably with most of the racing you do is all endurance racing. Is that correct?
Yeah, most of it, yeah.
And finishing is significantly more important than like a split second like win over someone else. So I imagine that factors in, like, because you want to finish the race. So you probably, I would imagine you're saying like, I'm trying to make really good decisions the entire time. Obviously you make some get closer than others.
I think, yes. I mean, on paper it makes sense, and you'd think that would be how we race, and to a point that is what endurance racing is, but much more so in the past when there was a bigger disparity between the cars and a bigger disparity between the percentage of cars that finish that didn't, less than half of the field used to finish. Now, 2 cars DNF or something. So now you kind of have to qualify every lap for 24 hours to make it work. So you have to lunge every car, every corner for 24 hours within reason. So unfortunately, it's less of an effect in endurance racing now than it used to be. Let's see what the hypercar season brings, which is this year and moving onwards. If there's a huge disparity between the cars because of the new tech, it might be that you just have to cruise round for those 24 hours to make sure you finish.
When are they first coming in? Is it this year or next year?
This year. So Toyota will release their car in 8 days, and then you've got Glickenhaus by Colles for this year with 2 cars. So that'll make it a 5-car grid total for this year. And then the following year, you've got Peugeot, Audi, and Porsche back. So you've got pretty much everyone back.
Do you know if you're racing it?
Not yet. We're in talks.
Okay. TBC.
TBC. Maybe not. Yeah, TBC. We're in talks with a couple of teams. And then, hopefully when Porsche, Audi, and Peugeot, Audi, Porsche, and Toyota are all back in, along with an extra couple of privateers, and fingers crossed, the likes of, I like to see the Valkyrie hopefully join back in because they were planning on doing it. If they can do it and then McLaren do it, all of a sudden you've got this golden age back again, like the GT1 era, and I think that'd be great.
So cool. How do you think the cars are going to compare versus like current LMP1?
So it's a double-edged sword. It's a bit like what's going to happen in Formula One in 2022. So it will bring the golden era back. You'll have visually cars that look like hypercars on the road. So you'll have these Senna GTRs, these Valkyries, this Toyota hypercar, and you'll be able to look at it as a kid growing up who loves motorsport and have it as a poster car and say, I want that one day, like a McLaren F1 or a Porsche GT1 that you used to see, which is great. The downside of that is the road legality side and the parameters around the bodywork mean that the car will be way slower than an LMP1 car, which means in our lifetime, we'll probably never see a Le Mans lap time like we did the last 2-3 years. Same like Formula One. Less so in our lifetime in Formula One, because Formula One have so much money that they might, even with the restrictions, get back to a good lap time in the next 10, 15 years, but certainly not for a while. But for LMP1 to hypercar, you're looking at around about 10 seconds a lap slower.
That's quite a lot
in the cars, which means the LMP2s are going to have to be slowed down as well, because if the LMP2s stay the same, they'll be quicker than a hypercar, which makes obviously no sense.
Do you think the cars becoming slower is necessarily a bad thing? I quite like the top class just being ridiculous, but
yeah, I'm a bit of an engineering geek, so I love the engineering behind just making something as quick as physically possible. So I will miss that. But I think for the sport and for the audience, and even for us as drivers, to like cool cars, they did need to come back more towards a normal looking car. Because, you look at a Toyota hypercar now and you think, well, why? I'm not going to look at that and buy a Yaris. It doesn't really correlate. I'm surprised they keep spending the amount they do in there. But whereas if they're now making a hypercar and that relates to their success on the track, just like the 918 sales, Porsche are lucky that the 918 looks a bit like an LMP1 spaceship, but it doesn't sell road cars in the same way. And it also doesn't attract people in the same way because it doesn't correlate road to race.
Yeah, and I think you look at someone like Toyota, like they clearly love racing.
Yeah,
but like you said, their road cars do not translate across that. Even if they make a hypercar, it's like, yeah, okay, they've made one car that's like some stupid amount of money. the rest are not all mad sports cars. But yeah, it's and something like the 918. I don't know whether that made it. I'm sure they didn't make any money out of that, but it was just a big R&D.
Yeah, I think where the car that they will make the money out of will probably be when they do come back in 2 years to WEC, because it will be very similar to the one on track, and they have to make a minimum number, much like they did with the Ford GT, for them to come back with the GT car. And you see, that's cool. You see, Ford probably did it the best because it was an attractive road car. It wasn't insanely expensive. It was still rare. It was still very desirable, and it looked almost identical to the GT car which won at Le Mans. So that's like a perfect story for them.
Yeah, that was such a good crossover, and I think massively everyone loved it. Whether you liked the actual car, the whole thing was very cool. Just a mad thing. And I guess we seem to be going through this phase of people, and I guess it is endless, dropping out, coming back, dropping out, coming back, because the comeback is always better than just staying and winning.
Yeah, and I think for obviously you've got the whole VW scandal with emissions and everything, why Porsche and Audi have to leave. They're part of the same group. But on top of that, Porsche look at the GT class. They're winning the GT class. They won LMP1 for 3 years in a row. That's not selling them any road cars because it doesn't look like a road car. Whereas this amazing RSR looks like almost every Porsche that you bring out on the road now. They look similar to that. And it's more attractive to most kind of real car nuts. You buy a Porsche GT2 RS because it looks like the RSR, not because it looks like a 919 hybrid. So they'd won 3 years in a row in the top class. It was costing them 250 million plus a year. You think, why not save a bit of money, pay off this scandal debt that they owe, and then come back in again, without this VW gate.
Yeah, and they've capped. Have they tried to cap spending?
Yes, so spending is capped. Can't remember the figure off the top of my head because it doesn't really apply to privateer teams, so I don't really pay too much attention.
It's quite a lot less, isn't it? It's like
quite a lot less. It's
10 times less,
100 million plus less, but it will still be triple privateers probably.
Yeah, but then they're manufacturers, aren't they? Big dogs.
Yeah, exactly. It's what's going to happen. But I'm glad to see it, and I'm excited. It was a bit of a mess at first when they said what they were going to do, but now it's very exciting that the big manufacturers are coming back in.
Yeah, it's cool. I love it. I specifically love the GT cars because of how similar they look to the road cars. And I think with this new category, either the cars that are already out that they're going to look like, or the new ones coming out that will be the road version of these cars. It's just a very cool thing. And then we'll get to see them out. People will drive them. People will take them on track and whatever, and get lapped by some race car.
And then you've got the purest form of category back, because like you, I think even I, when I get out of a stint of the LMP1 car, the first category I look at is GT Pro. It's my favorite category. The cars are the coolest cars, and every single driver from the top to the bottom of the field is a paid pro who's a very successful, well-accomplished driver, and they're fighting like hell. That obviously happens in LMP1, but the difference with the cars makes it not an exciting fight. So you've got these exciting names like Alonso and Buemi and all that, but if they're just cruising around, then you pay less attention. Now, hopefully, we'll have the cool cars back with the cool names, and it'll all come together.
Yeah. Is there going to be a balance of performance, or is it just a regulations and run with it?
There is a balance of performance. Yeah. I mean, there also is an LMP1. But, R&D basically always finds a way to make the most of those rules. And that's where the difference will be. And having weight in the right place, you can have two cars that weigh the same, but if the weight is all on the floor in the right car because they've done the right R&D, then you can save a lot of lap time there. And in the hybrid, originally it was every car had to be a hybrid. And then when the privateers just said, look, we just can't afford to make it hybrid. You can now choose. So, of course, technically it's a choice, but, Bicolors, Glickenhaus, and all the other privateers that will choose to come in, they don't want to not be hybrid. They just don't want to spend triple their budget because hybrid is a very expensive system to master. Yeah.
And is it, I guess by nature, it's heavier?
Yeah, it is heavier. But in saying that, it just goes to show how good Toyota are at making their car. I mean, their car had to have weight ballast put in because it was made underweight, even with a hybrid, compared to Rebellion and Bicolors' and Giannetta's car. Yeah. All three of us were over the weight, minimum weight, and Toyota were under it and had to put ballast in the car, even with a hybrid system.
Yeah, I guess that's what your 250 million a year does.
Yeah, make a carbon tub that's an extra 5 kilograms lighter and a wing mirror that's 100 grams lighter, and it all adds up.
All adds up. And then with the hybrids, the only cars, actually, I don't know, were they 4-wheel drive, or were some 4-wheel drive and some not?
Some 4-wheel drive and some not. So effectively, any car that is hybrid is 4-wheel drive.
Okay.
So the Toyotas were 4-wheel drive, but the Genettas, Rebellions, and Bicolases weren't. They were all rear-wheel drive.
And did that sort of affects the kind of like, obviously, how they go around the track? But
yeah, it's really interesting. It's driven in a very, very different way. The Rebellion is probably the favorite of any LMP1 car that's, I think I'd safe to say, ever been made for a driver, because you drive a Rebellion like you're qualifying every lap, flat out the corner. There's no fuel saving. There's no conserving of power. You just absolutely rag it. And the Rebellion was quicker than the Toyota, with a budget of about 10% of Toyota, on raw pace pretty much everywhere, especially on downforce and efficiency, because it's an Orica made chassis. But the only place really where it loses is when you then put it in a race situation outside of a qualifying situation. And then all of a sudden, if the Toyota catches up a GT car coming into a corner, it'll simply lift off and the computer will automatically save that amount of power, brake by wire, save all of the heat, turn it into power, save it for the front wheels. So when you floor it out of the corner, everything you've lost on the way in, you can gain on the way out. Whereas in the Rebellion, everything you lost on the way in, you never get back.
Yeah.
And that also helps in the wet. The Toyota can go to full power out of the corner and just let the 4 wheels independently
work itself out.
pull you out. Yeah.
No, it's all very cool. What else did you do? Did you do any other racing this last year?
We did Spa, Silverstone, and Le Mans. Did I do any rallycross last year? I think most of it got cancelled, so I don't think I did any rallycross. I did some Euro NASCAR testing, which was a bit of fun, because I was going to be doing that championship on the side, but their calendar obviously got all mixed up with everything with COVID. So I think race-wise, that was it. I did a classic race.
What did you race
in an SWB, Silverstone, which was really cool. 911.
Was that a green one?
Yeah.
Oh, I've recently met this guy. Yeah.
Oh, have you? Oh, okay, cool.
Pun there. I mean, hung out. This is someone that Oli knows, and I've met recently, who has a few cool cars.
Very cool.
Started doing some
we
more
did
racing.
some testing the week of, I think it was a 750 Motor Club race. I think he had his XJ there as well. Him and 2 mates shared the car on the weekend after some of the testing. And then the plan is to do some Peter Auto events, which are some very cool events, which I know you know about. If this lockdown opens up, then we can go and do some cool endurance racing and some cool other cars. He's got a BMW GT2. I think it was GT2 back in its day, which is a cool standing car.
It's like a GT2 M3 or something. M3
yeah, I think
GTR.
So it's an M3 GTR, which I think raced in a GT2 class. But that thing's mega with the sequential box and everything. Really cool.
Yeah, a couple of cool things. What else? Have you done any other fun track-based things? Obviously, you're probably doing a lot of instruction. I've seen you at Silverstone every now and then.
Yeah, a lot of instruction. What other track-based stuff? My memory goes terribly. I can't even blame it on being too busy this year, because I definitely wasn't as busy as normal this year. I think other than track days and a couple of filming days for film stuff, it's been those main 3 races. Yeah, I think that's not.
What's your daily at the moment? You still got the Aston?
No, so the Aston went 2 months ago. So now I've got an M8 Comp Coupe.
Okay.
And I've got the Audi S4, my estate I've had forever.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I'm going to swap the Audi to like a 4x4 more family car. The M8's definitely not a family car. It's big enough to be one, but it isn't one.
Is that a BRDC deal?
Yes, yeah.
They do very competitive rates, I've heard.
Yeah, exactly. Very
cars.
Competitive rates. And I love the car and I would love to buy one outright, but there's just nowhere to be able to spend that money on an M8. It's a very expensive car outright, but we get a great leasing deal. And yeah, I've got it for as long as I can keep paying the monthly. So it's a good car to have for the money, that's for sure. So yeah, with having the Vantage as well and the Audi, they're all quite similar in the sense that they were all sports car-y, but not supercar-y. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't just have these 3 or 4 cars lying around. So got rid of the Aston. The Audi will go as well. And then I'll have a kind of 4x4 family car, whatever, like a Macan GTS or something, or a Range Rover or something, and then keep that with the BMW. I wish I went for the X5 Comp, actually, because it was the same price as the M8 Comp, but way better for what I need for the next year. That M8 is great fun, but it's good at everything and great at nothing.
Yeah. Okay, I get you. Like, it's not an amazing sports car, but it's still quite like sounds good, comfy.
Yeah, I'd say it would be an amazing car for 50 to 60k.
Yeah.
Not.
Which it will be at some point.
Which it will be about 3 seconds after I got it. So to be honest, the secondhand market for those is going to be amazing. So anyone looking to get a secondhand M8 Comp, great car, don't get me wrong. Just brand new, when you're looking at 6 figures for a car like that, it's a lot of money.
It is crazy. I think a lot of people at the moment, I've definitely have it, where we've been stuck at home for ages and not really allowed to go anywhere. And I sit here and I look at all these sports cars and I'm like, I don't get to use them. I'm paying insurance, paying everything. And then also I realized at one point a while ago that all the cars were very similar, like different, different enough to say that, but they were all like driver's cars in inverted commas, like designed for an experience. And I was like, yeah, but day to day, I actually want something comfy.
Yeah, exactly. And that is kind of why I've had the Audi for 5 years now. And I'm finding it very hard to let go of, because you can actually fit 2 humans in the back, which you can't in the BM.
Yeah.
The boot is, I'd say, genuinely hand on heart, I can physically fit more things in than the back of a Range Rover. Because every time I've used the Range Rover to move house or move stuff around, I can fit pretty much more in my Audi with the back seats down. There's just estate cars are so good, and that's why I love those cars. So when the M8 Comp came, I was like, oh my God, that looks amazing. That is awesome. I can't wait to drift that. And then I got in it and I was like, doesn't really do anything else though.
Yeah. Burns a lot of rubber. I have an S4. That is my daily S4 Avant. And I keep looking at other stuff, and then I keep coming back. I'm like, yeah, but it's pretty damn good. It does the stuff. Yeah. And the amount of times I've put the back seats down and filled it full of whatever, tons of stuff.
Yeah.
And you go, like, I look at loads of cars. Like, there's loads of cars I love. Like, although I don't know whether for daily purposes I'm ever going to go that level again. But like an M5, I love the M5, but I hate the boot style. Like, I want a touring shape now for chucking stuff in. And there's just so many really cool cars that don't have that shape. Like, I had my M2. I love the M2, but it doesn't have that shape. I love an M3. It doesn't have that. You just can't use it to put stuff in the back.
Yeah, the S4 Avant is amazing for that, and that's just why I love mine so much. Maybe I'll just wrap it instead of sell it. Wrap it a different color and be like, oh, I've got a new car.
Right. One of the things you've done in the last year is you've driven very quickly at an
Not quick
unknown
enough.
speed. Not quick enough.
That's probably the most exciting thing I've done this year, to be fair. When you said on-track stuff, I was like, does that count as on-track stuff? Not really.
So you were behind the wheel of the SSC Tuatara. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
When was that? November?
Or
actually, when was the run?
It was probably actually more like October, because when it released, it was actually 3 weeks before that. Let me have a look now. October, probably, yeah. Yeah, anyway, October, November, around there. I'm trying to find the pictures from it.
Yeah. Over in the States, in a very quick, high horsepower, American-made vehicle.
Yeah, I'd never seen it actually before I got there. I was lucky to get there actually, because if it wasn't for Nyla, my fiance, wife now, we technically had to get married on paper for several reasons, for visa and for work and blah, blah, blah. If we hadn't literally been married, they wouldn't have let me go over.
Were they not?
No. So she was coming along anyway for holiday. And I got to the check-in desk at Heathrow and I was like, oh, here are my work papers. Blah, blah, blah. They're like, what do you mean? You can't go. And I was like, because, the disparity in the rules at this point was so mixed. And even, I'm Manchester-based, even calling Heathrow ahead of time at BA saying, this is what I have on me. Can I fly with this? They said, we're not sure. You'll have to ask at the check-in desk. We're not allowed to give advice over the phone. I'm like, well, if you can't give me advice over the phone, who's going to give me the advice?
Yeah.
And then we got there, and then they're like, no, this doesn't work. You can't go there unless you're seeing family. And then she's like, is that your girlfriend? Or she's like, she's my wife. Does she have family there? I was like, no, but she's American. She's like, oh, well, that's fine then.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was lucky she was stood next to me, because if she was like parking the car, I would have been like, turn around, we've got to go.
Yeah, we got to go back.
Yeah.
It's brutal, some of the changes. Like turning up in the airport and unknown.
Yeah,
But,
can you believe it? BA couldn't tell me, government website couldn't tell me. There's no. Anyway, that was the first drama of the trip.
Okay, so tell the audience what happened from your point of view.
So I met the guys from SSC, I think earlier in 2020, or maybe even end of 19, actually. So quite a while ago. We were in talks for a long time. I knew they wanted to do this run. I'd never seen the car before. I hadn't actually even met the owner or anyone to do with the company originally. I was originally put forward through from the production company, funnily enough, through some of my stunt driving work. And they said, hey, we've got this guy. We know you want a semi-well-known name, who's also stunt driver, who's good at high-speed stuff. I'd obviously done a few of the Koenigsegg runs before, just on a smaller scale, like VMAX style, 230, 240 mile an hour style stuff.
That's still
Koenigsegg press. Still pretty quick, yeah. But that was on big runways, which is, I'll get to, being the biggest difference. So my name got put forward, and it was great to be chosen. I was up against some great names, like kind of the Jimmy Johnsons of the world, for anyone who knows racing over in America, and other, like some names that I'd say were a lot bigger than me, but maybe were probably harder to get, with a bigger bill probably.
Yeah.
And, they had families and maybe saw a bit more risk, whereas I was a bit like, fuck it, let's do it. So yeah, then I met the team, went over there. The first time I saw the car was the week of the record attempt. And yeah, it was on the same road that Koenigsegg had been on. Big production, like at the Hollywood level style production. They had jets in the air and helicopters, even during testing and everything. And I thought originally it was being filmed as a documentary, but they're like, no, we're making this like a film. So that was cool, and it was exciting. And, from the word go, this car was quick, super quick. We were testing only on runways, though, up until the actual point where we were allowed to close the road. Yeah. And then we closed the road that famous morning, and then did the record attempt that wasn't unfortunately meant to be. It was a speed that didn't seem correct, and now they're having to redo it. I'm obviously leaving gaps in between because I know you want to ask questions. I don't want to kind of speak too much about it because I could go on and on and on about it.
No, it was a really interesting story to see from this side, and I think a lot of people thought, like the naysayers, let's just say, call it a collection of people, like know you.
Yeah.
Like Tim knows you. You know Tim, and I believe he got in touch with you before any of the stuff.
Yeah,
and I guess for you get in the car. You drive the car as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And then you get told you've broken a record, which must be pretty cool. That must have felt very cool at the time.
That was really cool at the time. Yeah, it was very cool at the time. And I think to talk you through my suspicions and my worry during kind of the week of doing that. This is actually the first interview I've done about it since, so.
Oh. Here we go.
Not that it's that hot off the press and you're going to get 1 billion more subscribers because of it, but it's the first time I've spoken about it.
That's good.
But during the week, we had no references other than we had I can't remember what's it called now? Not V-Box, but a form of V-Box. I can't remember the name now.
Yeah.
Duotron, that was it. So we had a Duotron box on board. And another GPS reader in the middle of the screen, and then the GPS reader, which is based in the car. And all three of those were in sync during my first testing times. And when I say in sync, they're in sync with each other, but I don't know which one of those is right, which isn't. Yeah. And when you're on a runway, we were only managing to get up to speeds of about 200 to 210 on the first runway until we found a longer one. And at about 200 mile an hour on like an 8-lane, no white line, desert plane, it felt that quick. And it didn't feel crazy. It didn't feel slow. the only thing I've got to go on is my screen. And then the guys from the computer go, here's the telemetry, here's the data, here you go. This is the speed we're doing. There's a 3 mile an hour difference between screen and this. And as a drive, and at that speed, or at pretty much any speed between there and under, you go, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then you go to a bigger runway, and then we got to around 250 mile an hour. And that's when I first was like, okay, we've done 250. And I was like, it didn't feel amazingly quicker than the last run. It felt a bit quicker. It didn't feel that much quicker. But I was excited at that point. I was like, okay, great. Like, this feels very doable. We only need to do 278 to break the world record. They were obsessed with getting 300, but I was just like, I just want
to let's beat the record.
Get the world record, cash my check, go home, have a baby.
Come back next year for 300.
Exactly. So I was like, great, I've only got like 30 mile an hour left to go. I can do this. Obviously, during this whole time, of course, I'm scouting the road, eat, living and breathing that road, going to it day and night. And it's a dangerous road to do this record on. I'm very surprised it gets used that often. It's like the highway to do it on now. There's 2 huge ditches either side. It's not completely flat.
Okay.
So, an airport runway would be much, much better. And there are runways out there that are long enough to achieve that. I know it seems crazy, but there are these NASA shuttle style runways that are long enough to achieve. Oh, really?
There was one used in I can't remember which Mission Impossible film. They were driving down it for like 15 minutes.
yeah. I think that Cape Canaveral in Florida, I think it was. Yeah, that's super, super long. I think it's 3.5 miles long runway. So yeah, when I got to the road, that's the first time I was properly nervous. When I did the first run, I was like, okay, this feels twice as quick as being on the runway.
Yeah.
It's really quick now, because now I have white lines. Now I have a ditch each side. And now if the wind moves the car, I don't just have to go, oh, whatever, I'll just bring it back into the middle later on. Now if it moves the car, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going into a ditch.
Yeah.
So that's when it started to feel quick, but still, when I did hear the final speed, they come in, they're like, oh, you've done it. I'm like, what? Really? I was like, but of course your first reaction, my first reaction was doubt, like that seems too good to be true. But then from that point, it was just, totally relieved. Like, thank God we've done it. It felt fast as fuck. So great. That's great that it's over. Never been quicker than 240 mile an hour. So it whatever the speed ends up being in calculation terms, whether it's Tim's 250 or 280 or 220 or whatever it is, around about that 250 middle mark, it's hard to really feel, I think, in a road car. And that's where the struggle came when I first saw a video and started speaking to Tim. I'm like, it doesn't add up. The maths just don't add up. And I was the first person to speak to Tim and agree with Tim, to be like, anything you need, I want to help you with, to find out what's going on.
Yeah. That whole bit, I remember it coming up. I remember Tim, I think before he posted the video, or no, he might have posted the video and was like, just watch the video. Like, I've tried to make it as clear as possible in the shortest amount of time and way. And you watch the video and I was like,
makes sense.
I don't see any discrepancies here. All of the things you say make sense.
Yeah.
They need to be explained or whatever. And then there was this massive backlash from, not ignoring the manufacturer. Like, no one knows what was on, but everything they've done since, hopefully they'll go and do it. But the press in the UK, in America.
Was it that bad in the UK? Because I know there was a couple of, whether it was Motor Trend or a couple of others that lashed out, but I don't know, maybe you're about to tell me some more, but I thought overall what was surprising is you and me know Tim and other people do. And even if you don't know Tim, the facts were there. And even the person who wants it to be true the most, or maybe second the most, because I don't sell the car, would probably be me. Yeah. And even I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It can't be right.
Yeah, and that was it. And I think it was a couple of the like Motor Trend calling him out, and everyone was just being like, oh, you stupid, dumb YouTuber people. And you're like, what? Like, just look at the things you said and say how they're stupid, because that's physics and maths.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And you can't explain it away.
And when the first kind of suspicion came out, or, well, not suspicion, the first numbers and mathematical data came out of, look, this is point A, this is point B, this is how long it takes you. At that point, I was like, oh, well, this is crap. This is really bad. I feel really bad for SSC. What a crappy mistake. But then when there was more and more and more defense behind, no, it's definitely right. That's when it got really unfortunate, because it was just like, I just wish at that point, regardless of going back in time now, because I still genuinely don't know if it was a mistake or on purpose. And that's obviously a huge allegation if anyone wants to say it's on purpose, but mistake or not, they are a clever bunch of people to make a car that can go that quick. There should have been some hands held up very, very quickly to say, what? I'm kind of even tripping over myself because and I've been through it in my mind so many times that, why would you even use if it was on purpose, why would you use the same road? Because of course it's going to come out. Like someone's going to calculate and play the videos side by side, even if it's going to be for like a news channel. Well, so then I was like, oh, it must be a mistake. Like, okay, fair enough. Well, I've established in my head that's not the right speed, so it must have been a calculation mistake in the speedo or in the somewhere, and that at least gave me a bit of peace of mind. But the longer it went on, the more and more I wanted to separate myself from it, and it was just really disappointing to go from a high of having a world record related to the field that you're in, speed, whatever that is, to being associated to something that's got a lot of controversy, and especially when you've risked your life with a pregnant wife to do it and then not have achieved it, and by whatever 20 to 50 mile an hour difference is really annoying.
Yeah, and I felt so sorry for you after all that, like, because you clearly, like, emotionally doing that run looked like it was pretty damn stressful, and like you were very glad it was over at the end.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of it, isn't it? When someone said, that's done, we've done it. The first 300 mile an hour mark was the run before, and I think it was like 301 or something, which was on the screen in front of me, and 316 or something on this Duotron box. And even that was when I had the bit of wind, and that's when I said to everyone, like, one more run, that's it. Like, I'll try my best to get a 300 mile an hour average, because the run on the way back that we had to do within a 20-minute window was the good run. So I was like, I'm happy to do one more, but I'm not going back the other way.
Yeah.
Because I was close last time to something going wrong, so I'm not going back the other way. And the tires at this point have done some high-speed cycles. So, the thread inside the tire, even if it is only 250 mile an hour, will be starting to separate. So that played on my mind as well. Does the famous kind of saying of this is the last run mean, let's turn up the numbers type thing? Who knows? I have no idea to this day. I wish I did. Even when it started to come out, I had no communication, which disappointed me with the company.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think that was the, like you said, really just a disappointing thing off the back of it was this resolute, like, no, you're wrong. It was right.
Yeah.
And that just didn't, I understand it. And I know there's a lot of financial stuff going on around having the car that's the fastest in the world. I'm sure they sold a lot of cars off the back of it. I think the price went up in the middle, all of these things. But to just resolutely stick your line in the sand and say, no, like, you're wrong, this is correct, and then to keep putting out crap. That was the stuff that was published after that point was all just kind of waffly rubbish. And they're like, well, when we've got the video, then we'll post a video. And everyone, I feel like anyone is just like, yeah, but Pixar, it didn't happen. Like, just post the video. If you had the video, you would have posted the video.
Yeah. And it was super frustrating because I mean, you know me well enough that I don't really talk badly about anyone. If I've got something bad to say about someone, I just don't deal with those people, and that's that. So I was in a sticky situation where I was like, I got along with the people who were there on the days. I appreciated the car for what it can do. It's a quick car, and I didn't want to suddenly just turn face. That's why I kind of stayed off being online for about a week or so. I didn't want to turn face and be like, yeah, I agree, this is completely wrong. So yeah, it was just really tough because you want to say so much to defend yourself, but in the end, it was very much just like, I'm just as disappointed as everyone else, if not more so.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, you're the driver. You got in the car, you drove it very fast. We know it's an unbelievably fast car. it probably can go really damn fast.
Yeah.
But just the circumstances and whatever
Yeah.
just didn't work out.
Yeah, and I got it. I was, I tried to stay as impartial as I could. Obviously, spoke to Tim, spoke to my friend who owns Race Logic, who owns VBox. We were on the phone for many hours. Engineering Explained, friends online, loads of people. I spoke to as many people as I could, who I trust and have good sources and are intelligent and better engineers than I am. And the more I found out from them, the more worrying it was for me from my side. But yeah, like you said, what's the biggest shame is that car's quick, and
it's really quick.
Yeah, 316. Okay, that's who knows. We'll never know. But 278 mile an hour for the world record. I can stick my neck on the line and say that car can definitely do 278 mile an hour. Drive. I guess what the best reference was, and completely by coincidence, was 2 weeks later I drove Zach's Regera at 200. What did we do? 404 kilometers an hour. I can't remember what it was. 241 mile an hour, was it?
Oh no.
Sorry, 250 mile an hour, was it?
It's between 240 and 250.
So I became the new VMAX car and did, I think it was 249 or something mile an hour. And I did those runs and I was like, yeah, this feels slower than the Tuatara. So I was like, okay. And in my back of my mind, while everything was going on, I was like, actually, no, I think it was just before everything was going on. But when I referred back to that in my mind, my mind was playing tricks on me, because I was like, but the Regera felt slower. But then the Regera was on a huge wide runway.
Yeah.
And the Tuatara was on that tight runway. So yeah, it was just so weird. It was like, I was very, very lucky that everything I've done in the past in my career kind of went for me. I have good friends. I have good faith in people. So, 0.1% of my reaction online was negative. I was very lucky that 99.9% of it was just complete support. And for the tiny bits that were negative, it was kind of along the lines of, and what you'd expect, the comments are, you're a racing driver, shouldn't be able to feel the difference between 250 and 300. And I think before I did the high-speed run, I'd probably say, yes, you should. But I think it was the disparity in a week's worth of testing with a gas reference that is already wrong, on 3 different runways, to then a road, to then a car, which is then turned up to a completely different boost level, and then back into a Regera, and then on a wider runway again. And when you're just going straight and you're looking half a mile ahead in the distance and not to the sides, it's just very, very hard to feel those differences. At Le Mans, when you're passing a GT car at 230 mile an hour or 210 mile an hour, whatever you're doing, and they're doing 20 mile an hour less, that reference from years of experience of how quickly you pass them. If you shot past them, you'd be like, my car's going 50 mile an hour quicker than normal. You'd be able to feel it then. But when there's no references, it was just very strange. And that really annoyed me, that I couldn't give a genuine reply of, yes, a driver should know that, or no, they shouldn't.
Yeah. And it's like anyone knows that when you you could drive at 70 miles an hour down a motorway, feels like you're going 30, or drive 70 miles an hour down a small single lane track road.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, well, one of them feels significantly faster than the other.
Yeah.
Even at at those speeds, an unknown speed, but very, very fast, let's say 250, 260, we don't really know. Do you start feeling other stuff from the car? Like the forces from the wheels spinning that fast and things like that?
So the tire pressures are very, very high. So you run close to 50 PSI in the tires to keep, and for those who don't know, what kind of PSI you have in your tires, it's about 40% more than normal, and about double what you'd have on a track. So very, very high, just to keep the bead on the rim. Michelin weren't there in person because they don't rate their tires at that speed. So obviously it's just a lawsuit waiting to happen if anything goes wrong. If I crashed and died, then it's just too risky for them. So they kind of, just like they will do with any high speed runs from now on, they'll just say, and they weren't there for Koenigsegg either, they'll just say, we're not part of this. So the forces you feel through the tire, really in a straight line, not much. But when you catch the wind, it's mainly the aero force. So you run the car with as least drag as possible. But of course, you have a high profile on each side. You have a high surface area, profile on each side. And because we have crosswinds on that road rather than tailwinds, which is really frustrating, it means that, the car starts to waver, like when you see trucks that aren't allowed to go over bridges in windy seasons in the UK or in Scotland. Much like that, at that speed, you become a billboard for wind. And it's the lightness of the wheel on the front. Everything has to be in slow motion, even though you're going quite a lot quicker. So it's weird to say slow motion, but your reactions on your hands have to be very delicate, because if you overcorrect the wind and then you go into the pocket where the wind is then dissipated, you'll then turn in towards that ditch. You'll go from correcting to overcorrecting. So you go from a track where this is overcorrecting to this is overcorrecting. So it's a very different sense. Accelerating wasn't much of an issue because we had all the time in the world to do it, but the decelerating was my enemy. I just didn't like it. It was, that car had no TC, no traction, no ABS, had no traction control either, but that's not an issue at that speed. Had no ABS, there was no slamming on the brakes, not that you would anyway. It was a very slowing down procedure. So you had to stay, let's say the speed was 250, to slow down between 250 and 200 over a long time. So, you just want it to end at that point when you've done it. So I see 301 on the dash. I'm like, great, start to slow down. And then like 5 seconds later, I'm still doing 270. I'm like, oh my God, I need to slow down even more. But you've just got to progress off that throttle pedal so slowly to keep the pitch in the car as flat as possible. In terms of car setup, you stiffen up the third elements in the car to keep the platform stable at those speeds. You do a few wing adjustments, but other than that, it's not rocket science. It just takes a stupid or a brave person who knows what they're doing.
And you got in and you went very fast.
I got in and went quick.
Would you do another high-speed run?
If I wasn't having a kid,
a car?
Yeah, in that car or any car?
In a car.
In a car, yes. And without a kid, definitely yes. It might be a slightly different answer when she arrives, because they're quite risky at the speeds we're doing now. We're doing 210 mile an hour plus in Le Mans cars every single year. So that side, but you've got tons of downforce on the car, and the car can kind of stop and change direction at that speed as well, which is what a road car cannot do. Yeah. The tires can explode at any minute at that speed. If something goes wrong, you can't decide to brake. Like if anything went wrong at the peak speed, that is it. You can't roll off into that ditch and survive. It's not possible. A fellow Brit had passed away 5 days earlier before the record, attempting attempting the same land speed record in a road legal car that we had done. So that put a lot of not fear but cautiousness into my mind that there's less on me to get this done than there is them. They want to sell cars, their livelihood depends on it. This guy, the guy filming it, the guy's invested the money into the production. But for me, it's just like, if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. And for an autobiography, maybe in the future, if I ever become a WEC champion, there's a lot more I'll say to what happened during that week that did get on my nerves from a production side. It was very tough. It was like being involved in something that's as important as a big race like Le Mans, but it being run by someone who's the Hollywood director rather than the guy who's actually wanting the team to win. So there was people who are just dead set on it needs to happen no matter what, which is just not something you want to be involved in.
And that's not what you want. There's absolutely, you want to be as far away from that stuff as possible if you can. You want the person, you want to be able to pull the plug if you don't think it's safe.
Yeah, and that was actually, funnily enough, and they know that now. Post record, I said this to them when I was still on that road. I said to them, my initial plan was to come here, do the testing, get the first of the two payments for this job, and if the car wasn't safe, go home. Yeah, because that was it, and because I expected the car to not be good enough. I'd never heard of the company. I know they have a reputation, so don't get me wrong, but I, ignorantly had never heard of the company. Everyone who I deal with, whether it be Michelin or these other car companies and brands that I deal with, were very much like, be careful. Yeah. You know what you're doing, so you make your decision, but just want to let you know we're not involved in this. So I was of the mindset of, okay, great, I'll go do the testing. What harm can it do? I'm on a runway. If I spin off on a runway, I don't think anything can go wrong. It's the road where I'll perish if something goes wrong. But then the more I drove the car, the more I fell in love with it. and the people there, and how quick and impressive the car was, and how stable and safe it was. So my initial plan was to go there and not expect much, and actually got a lot of confidence in that car. So that was even more painful why it didn't work out, because I wanted this David and Goliath story, because I got there, drove the car for the first time and thought, this will be great, because if this does it, this will be amazing.
And yeah, I remember it coming out, just the news breaking, and being like, what? Who has done what? And then I was watching the video, and I was like, who's driving this car? I recognize this person, and I was like, "Oh, it's Oli! What the hell?" Like, and all these people that have been involved and stuff, and you're like, "Oh my god, this was serious." But in the run up, did you talk to Michelin about it?
Yeah. So when I say Michelin weren't involved, they weren't legally allowed to, or they didn't legally want to be present, and for all the right reasons. Of course, my friends that are at Michelin, they can give me advice on what the tires can and can't do on their paper data sheet, and I can have friends that know engineering very well, and my own experience and back knowledge of what's safe and what's not, and what can and what can't be done. So I did have advice and help, but I think after Bugatti did their latest run, which is obviously incredible what they did, albeit only one way and technically not a record, blah 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 blah. When it got to that,
car or whatever,
I mean, it's incredible what they did. And to be honest, they probably did it in the right way, even though it's not a record.
Yeah.
They spent 1% of probably the marketing budget. They used their own track. They did it in the safest possible way in a car that, okay, is not really a road car. It's been all done up and roll caged and stripped out and whatever. But they still physically did the speed.
They did.
Whether it's on completely standard tires or not, reinforced or what, they're still pilot sports. They still did the speed. They still did it. They spent hardly any of the marketing budget, and they have 194 million views on YouTube on that run.
Yeah.
So they got more press than Koenigsegg without having to spend the money or get a Guinness World Record. So they don't care that it's not a world record. They don't need to care. They won't sell any less cars because of it. And it's almost more frustrating that, as a Koenigsegg or a Tuatara or a Hennessy, it's hard for them because they need to have the Guinness World Record, because they can't get away with what Bugatti did and sell cars off of it, whereas Bugatti can. So that's the interesting thing.
Yeah, it's true.
As a driver, you'd rather do the sheltered 10-mile runway with the trees, with the roll cage, in a Bugatti, great, still do a quick speed. And then getting back to my point, that's why tyre companies from that Bugatti point onwards, have decided the speed of the cars is accelerating quicker than our tyres and the safety of our tyres. So they might be able to do 350 mile an hour, who knows? But they haven't done enough testing to know what happens with that centrifugal force on that tyre, on that canvas, over 250. Bugatti could only do 300 mile an hour for a couple of seconds before something really went wrong on that tyre. So they were told, as soon as you get to that magic marker, back off. So that was another reason in the back of my head. Again, we keep coming to reasons why, when I heard of the 316 average, I was like, it's a long time at that speed for those tires.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, part of me was like, because presumably everyone had a live stream of the data.
Yeah.
So when it was getting to like 320, I was like, well, surely someone would pull the plug at that point. Surely someone would be like, stop accelerating. If that is the speed you're going, 330, literally no one has a clue what those tires will do.
Ugh. I think they did want to, I don't know whether the speed was a mistake or a malicious attempt at a record. I'll never know. Let's say it is the more unfortunate of those two scenarios. If it is that, I don't believe everyone watching also is in on something.
No.
So that, combined with the fact that this common misconception that even Tim made the mistake in his videos and others, I had no radio comms.
Okay.
So even if they wanted to pull the plug, my screen only ever went up to 300 mile an hour in the car, whether it was limited to that, stopped at that, whatever. That was just the only speed I ever saw when I got to the magic kind of 300 number. So at that point, when I saw 300, I looked back up and just kept counting for another. I said to myself at that time, I'll count for another 3, 4, 5 seconds. And as long as I get no wind in those 5 seconds, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Because I thought to myself, I don't want this screen to be wrong ironic, and it'd be 299 and I have to go again.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to get it over with. So that's why I kept going as long as I did. But when I came back and saw how quickly it was accelerating at that point, I was just like, I was just like, how can it accelerate so quickly, at that speed? But even if I take that and apply it to 220 to 260 mile an hour, that, now looking back on it, is still so impressive how quickly it accelerates
so
over 200 miles
fast.
an hour. Yeah. Just, because the Regera, I'd say the Regera is much more a stable car, much better on the brakes and much more refined. But it did, and it's hard to compare because I don't know what the SSC Tuatara actually did in speed. But if we take a much lower figure of, let's say, a 200 mile an hour to 230 acceleration, it's much quicker in the Tuatara than it is in the Koenigsegg. But top end, we don't know, we won't know. But it's definitely powerful. And the Hennessy is going to be interesting as well. The Hennessy is going to be really, really interesting. They didn't hold back online, did they, either?
I have seen nothing about this car. Literally, just like, here it is, and
I've seen nothing in the past either. Yeah, it looks very well finished, though. From what I can see online, it looks incredibly well finished. But yeah, it's as much as I don't like doing high speed runs, I also really like doing high speed runs, and I'm very addicted to it. So I really hope this doesn't taint companies like, even if it's just to get back at SSC, it'd be interesting if Hennessy asked me to do it, because I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of drama if they do. They'd be like, let's ask Oli to do it. That'll be fun.
You never know. That would be an unusual decision. Possibly.
It would be a very unusual decision, but I want it to not be an unusual decision. I want it's cool to have
a cool story.
Speed niche, and if that's I've done 4 Koenigsegg UK speed records before, and then I did the SSC. If it becomes a regular thing, then I'll get divorced probably. She'll leave me, but it'll be fun.
But yeah, I guess you can be that guy that drives all the really fast stuff that's not got a rocket in it or whatever.
Yeah. I think the reason why I keep being asked back to do things like that is because there's a ton of people who can do it. It's not a difficult thing to do. There's a ton of professional drivers who can do it, who would be very good at doing it. I think the difference is the kind of English style, sensible, will tell you to your face what's wrong and right with the car and when's time to call it quits and when's not. And that's why SSC got along with me during this period of a year and a bit before we actually first drove the car, is because I didn't take any shit, and I told them what was wrong with the car, what needs to be changed, the parameters that have to be in place before I even step foot in the thing. And then during the week, I was always the one that called it quits when it was getting too far, when it was like, right, okay, we need to stop now before we do X, Y, and Z. And that's a big thing for a car company doing a speed record, because they can't have kind of a yeehaw, happy-go-lucky, let's just risk it, because if it flips and the guy's hurt, then no one wins.
No, not at all. Because I think they tried to do another run, and I think they will be doing another run recently. I think the owner was driving it. That was the plan.
Yeah. So Larry's, I call him a friend now. I didn't know him until the week of the record, but Larry now took ownership of the car post that record attempt, because that was always the plan for his contract with that car. He's very much he's an FXX Cliente style driver, so he knows his cars. Not professional driver, but has experience. Yeah. And he was one of the people who was part of choosing me as the driver. So me and Larry get along well, and he's got a family, and there was a lot of risk in him doing the first attempt, so chose not to. And then when the decision came to do the second run, and I was asked to do the second run, I told them that I needed a lot of time to think whether I wanted to get back in that car. And with the production not running for the second attempt, there wasn't going to be production there. It was going to be just with there was just going to be excuse me, I've forgotten his name, who's the YouTuber that was going,
American one or a UK?
No, from the ring.
Misha.
Yes,
Robert. Misha and
that's
Robert.
it, Misha. So Misha was going to go, which was great. I was very happy for Misha going there. But there wasn't going to be a big production. There wasn't budget to hire a driver again. And also the baby was on the way. And it was, even the first time making the decision was hard. So the second time, it just wasn't worth the risk. But then with it being on a very, very open runway and much safer this time, I think Larry was confident enough to say, look, I now own the car. The risk is now fully with me. And also, if the ownership now being in his name, if he hires a driver and that driver passes away, there's some liability with the car owner then. So I think it makes much more sense now that Larry, and it's very cool for him if he does get the record, because then, the car owner owns the record. So it's annoying for me, but how it is.
Yeah. I think they ran into, because I think there's a big problem with cooling.
Yeah.
Because with the heavily turbocharged engine and whatever, everything just heats up, heat soaks. They don't drive around for very long. And then I think that's what happened. They lost some cylinders or something.
Yeah, I mean, I literally haven't spoken to them throughout that process. I spoke to Larry, but I haven't spoken to the engineers and the guys who are really in the know of what's going on with the car. But what speed was it 250 mile an hour?
250 or something.
Right.
But that was with a lot less boost.
So that's a good sign. I mean, that's a good sign. They were, from what Larry's saying, it was less boost than what we ran on the record day. And it was still 250 mile an hour, and it was on a runway instead of an infinitely long road. So we still had to brake and slow down with a car that's got no ABS. And with all respect to Larry, with a less qualified driver as well. So I was happy they didn't go there and do 140 mile an hour. Put it that way. I was happy it was a good speed. So that bodes well for doing kind of the 280 that's needed for their Guinness World Record.
Yeah, and that car should be it should be able to do it. It's clearly damn fast. It just needs to be done right, and I think we'll see it at some point.
I think we'll see it. And if it can just squeeze out a 301, then I think all will be forgiven with them. Public, critics, public, owners, everyone. I think their order book will still be full if they can make a 300 mile an hour car.
Oh, totally. Until someone else comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Are Koenigsegg going to reappear and bust out a 300?
I don't know. All the things I'm seeing that they are going to try and do another run. They probably, and this is me completely surmising and guessing, if that 316 average was real, I don't think they would have done, because they would have thought, what's the point? That's a big speed to try and achieve. And I think from what I'm hearing, they're aiming for just over 300 so they can get the world record. But to suddenly get a 316, it would have pushed everyone into the darkness of, let's just not risk that. So I think if, let's say, SSC get a 280 or a 290, then they'll probably still try again, which will be really exciting, because then you've got Hennessy, Hennessy, Koenigsegg, and SSC. But after this last final showdown, or whatever you want to call it, I hope they all stop.
Yeah, they do 300 and then stop.
Yeah.
Don't even necessarily need to do 300, but that's a very monumental number.
Yeah.
300. Done.
Yeah. It's huge. It is huge. I mean, planes take off half that speed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mental.
I had Christian von Koenigsegg on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
And this was literally, as I think, in the gap between me recording the podcast and me publishing it, which was 5 days later. That was when the record came out.
Oh no, we should have done it earlier. That would have been.
But I did ask him a little bit about high speed stuff before, anyway, and what they were going to do with the Jesco and blah 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 blah. And we were talking about the cars and other cars, and he mentioned American cars in it, and he said, "Well, our main problem is doing all the regulations." He's like, our car is we spend about 25% of the time making it go fast and 75% of the time making it pass all of the regulations that we have to in Europe, which I know
is way more relaxed in America.
The Americans don't have the same, which that in itself, you're like, well, it's a sort of different. It's almost like it's like a same record, but a different record.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It is because it's top speed for a road legal car, but the EU regs are so much stricter than the American regs. Yeah. And I noticed that from some of the interior differences with the car. We did that record without a roll cage in the car as well.
Yeah, you didn't have ABS. There's no way you would be allowed to have a
no
car with no ABS.
TC, yeah, things that are needed. And even in high-speed runs, you technically have to roll cage, but that's in an EU high-speed. This was done in America, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, you're right. That's more of a safety issue than an actual regulation issue. But there's so many things that you have to and that's what the guys at Koenigsegg were saying when I was sat with them, because we actually did that 250 mile an hour Regera run in Zach's car.
Yeah.
With the engineer sat next to me.
Okay.
With the laptop, which is just mental, because he was like, do you want me in or out the car? Because obviously, I'm 80 kilograms plus my equipment, which I don't need to have in the car. You should probably do it without me. And I'm like, well, do you think it can do it with both of us? Because I'd rather you be here. You can tell me when the battery's overheating. You can tell me blah, 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 blah. He's like, well, let's go. Let's test it. And we did the first one and it was 242. I was like, just stay in, because it might go 3 mile an hour quicker with you out, because, weight's a big factor in top speed. But it's even more impressive when you release the VBox data and you're just sat next to me wearing my spare helmet with your laptop, number plates flying around the footwell. It was pretty crazy. But yeah, while he was sat next to me, he was talking about exactly that, what you've mentioned, which is the EU regs they have to go through are just so strict. And everyone knows Koenigsegg do it properly. They're a very, very good company.
Yeah, they do. I love seeing all of these things, and I love the battle. And I sort of like... I like seeing, okay, Bugatti are like, damn, we've got to go faster again. Or, these people coming out. And in my eyes, I sort of hold Koenigsegg at the top. But not necessarily because they make the fastest. I think they do make the fastest car. But because they make the fastest car. But it's just all of the stuff. And also, their cars are 100% road legal. I could buy it in the UK and it will do that speed. Whereas a lot of the other ones, you couldn't do that. Or it might do the speed, but it might not be able to do it 4 times.
Yeah, and it might need a team of people and whatever. And Zach's car had been at a B&B the night before. They went through a drive-through at McDonald's on the way in. They didn't change the tyres over. They had a little once-over and a check. And the guy who sat next to me is he's flown in to look after the car because it's about to do a quick speed. Yeah. He didn't change anything on the car. All he did is change what can be changed, just like when you put, a Senna into drift mode and change the TC or whatever. It's more he was there to make sure if something went wrong, why it went wrong, X, Y, and Z. So like you said, it's very impressive what Koenigsegg have done. I hold them very, very high as these cars that can go quick, out the box as soon as you buy them. But it will be interesting to see the fight and whether Bugatti even choose to. For me, I was way more excited to see the Bolide or whatever you call it of Bugatti in their top speed run, because I look at that and I'm like, that looks like a WEC hypercar, and they've not talked about going to hypercar. So exactly. If that was racing next to a Senna GTR and a Valkyrie side by side down the Mulsanne, how cool is that? Are we allowed to swear in this podcast?
You sort of can. You sort of can. Sort of.
You can beep it out. I'll just say fuck a load of times.
We're like an hour and 20 in, you're safe. You have to get through the first 15 minutes, I think, and then you can say whatever you like. But I agree 100%. If that Bugatti is a real car ever, I don't know, it's kind of is and isn't, whatever. If that turns up as a WEC car and it races against the Aston, and then if Ferrari put an FXX in there or whatever, that would be mega.
That'd be so cool. That is so cool. Yeah, when Bugatti showed the designs of that car, and I think it wasn't that long after the SSC thing started to die down or had come out. I think it was within the same few weeks. It just showed how, and I'm not forgiving SSC for anything they did, but it just showed how much more a little company has to prove, which is why it's very impressive what Koenigsegg did. How much more a little company have to prove before people will believe and buy, than Bugatti, who basically released renderings of that car and one show/model car with a load of numbers. And they released a lap time of 3. The car isn't even driven on those circuits yet. And they're like, oh, we've broken the record at Le Mans and Nürburgring. And I'm like, people will eat it up. They love it. And they'll sell a car off of it. If they were, I don't know if they are or not, if they were pre-sold at 500 units, they'd all be gone.
I remember that. I remember someone saying, oh, we've done like a simulated Nürburgring lap time and it's going to do a 6 or whatever or something, which is faster than the Porsche. And it's like, sorry, hold on a minute. simulated time versus someone in a car. And because we know the simulated time of the 919 Evo, I can't remember what was the actual time. 6?
I don't know. That'd be interesting to see what the disparity was there.
But the difference between the simulated time and the actual time was like a minute.
No way.
It was literally something like that. I think it was like a good 45 seconds or something.
I don't understand why they don't take the rule of over deliver and under promise and over deliver. Because imagine if you said a very impressive Nürburgring time and then you ended up beating it by 2 seconds.
Smashed it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You'd be like, wow. But I mean, I've no doubt that's going to be an amazing quick car. It all makes sense. The downforce figures, the weight figures, the slicks that are on it, blah, 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 blah. But the simulated time thing is,
yeah, until it's done. And also that is it's just like a concept car. It's not a real production car.
Sell it, or is it just a concept?
I think they're just selling one.
Right.
I don't think they're making 6 or anything. I may be wrong. I would like to be surprised, but I believe they're only making one.
It frustrated me also about when the Valkyrie claimed it could, and I think the Valkyrie is going to be insanely quick. It's an amazing car, and I genuinely love Aston as a brand. And Darren, who does all their test driving, has done an amazing job with that car, the team, everyone. So this isn't a dig at anything like that. But I don't even know who said the comment, but I know it was said, and I think it was on maybe either JWW's video or someone else's video, where someone said that the Valkyrie will be quicker than an LMP2 car.
Yeah.
And first of all, the word LMP2 car has a big difference between if you mean a current LMP2 car, one from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, because it will beat an LMP2 car potentially from 15 years ago. I don't think it'll beat the last generation's LMP2 car. It will 1 billion% not beat the current generation's LMP2 car, because the current LMP2 car poll from last year was about 4 seconds quicker than Initial's LMP1 time in an Audi before they left the series. There's no way a car with a number plate on road tires or even on slick. It was on road tires too. I said, look, even if you put slicks on it, it's not going to be quicker than an LMP2 car. So they do come out with some bold claims, and it's a shame, because if I'd never heard that statement, I'd still think the Valkyrie is going to be one of the best freaking road cars ever in history. Yeah. But as soon as that statement said, I'm like, oh, come on, there's no way. No,
that was it. I remember.
At what point there was talks of it being as quick as a Formula One car. I'm like, oh.
It was when everyone had been in the sim. A couple of people had been in the sim, and they were like, okay, but how fast is this?
Right.
And they were like, oh, well, if you put they basically said like a modern supercar, this will be like way faster. And then they said, oh yeah, it's probably be as quick as or faster than an LMP1 car. Like,
yeah.
On road tires.
Yeah.
Maybe not. But even if it just deliver.
Yeah.
Under promise, over. But I guess maybe at this point they're trying to sell them.
Yeah, true. It's all a bit of a game, isn't it? It's a bit like when the Senna was meant to be as quick as a GT3 car. So Chris got together. Chris got together with a friend and said, whose friend said to Chris, who's a good friend of McLaren's. So I'm surprised he went through with it. I won't name his name, but he said to Chris Harris, he said, well, I actually own a 650S GT3 car and a Senna. Should we just do it? And they went to an RMA track day and just did it at lunch. And it was, I think, 6 seconds difference or something, or which still, there was it. The McLaren Senna, for me, on road tyres, still currently, until all these new hypercars come out, is seconds quicker than the next closest road car. It is the quickest road car in the world. Without question, it's unbelievable. Yes, it's a bit numb, but it's the best road car on tyres. An amazing, incredible car. Such a shame it's not worth what it should be. But yeah, you can't say it's going to be quicker than a GT3 car on slicks, because it's not.
It's not. And I think most people who hear that statement, I think most people who hear that statement will just be like, wow. But most people who hear that statement have no idea how fast a GT3 car is or isn't.
Yeah.
And you could just be, it's going to be round Silverstone, 3 seconds a lap faster than any other production road car. And everyone will be like, that's pretty good. Or that sounds good.
Yeah. Because if you look at, I don't know if Evo still do their Anglesey laps and their time chart. They do. So that's great, because everything's like tenths apart, and then the P1, and it was 1 second, and then the AC mono, and then something else. And And that in itself was amazing. And I think Mono, actually, now that I've mentioned it, when they did that time around Anglesey, they never really overpromised a lap time. But then when they went to Anglesey, they went a second quicker than a McLaren P1. Then they put the McLaren P1, because McLaren were upset, on their slick tyres. Or sorry, the McLaren P1 GTR and on slicks.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the new Mono came out and they went 2 seconds quicker than the P1 GTR and slicks on road tyres. Granted, Anglesey is a tiny, twisty track, perfect for a mono. It wouldn't happen at Silverstone, but it's still quite cool to see little companies like that. Like we took me and Adam Christodoulou that do a bit of driving for them. We took the BAC Mono R to a few tracks recently to try and beat or get close to a McLaren Senna time.
Yeah.
And it beats it at some tracks and it's not quite there on some other tracks, but it's still in development. We went to Goodwood actually to do a filming day, and it was a filming day. I don't know why I'm doing inverted commas. It was a filming day that I accidentally did 2 extra laps for at the end of the day when the camera car came in to see what lap time I could do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're never allowed to say what it was because Goodwood have strict rules on timing, what you're allowed to release and not. And technically, when it's a filming day, because they did that speed week, didn't they? And they had the track record to be beaten.
So where was the mono then? It didn't even go round, did it?
No. It's Goodwood and small car manufacturers sometimes don't always see eye to eye. It's not a good look if a mono goes up a hill and beats Kenny Bracken and McLaren.
Yeah. Too much
Which
money
is the unfortunate world of Goodwood, because if you pay 2 million for a stand or if you pay 100 grand for a stand, it makes a big difference on what you're allowed to do because of that.
It's still massive money.
Yeah, exactly. For BHC Mono to spend 6 figures on a stand at Goodwood, that's their biggest investment they'll ever put in. They have to sell, because the profit margin on the cars is tiny. They have to sell a lot of cars to make that money back. But it's tiny for them compared to what Porsche will pay.
Yeah, and a Mono R, for example, going up the hill really fast, I look at it and go, yeah, that's cool. That's what it's designed to do. I don't think that stops me buying a McLaren or something, because you just go, yeah, but one's got 2 seats, mate. So it's a different thing. Yeah, one's single-seater. If
you're wealthy enough to buy a Mono R, because they are very expensive for what they are, aren't they? They're beautifully made, don't get me wrong, but they're very expensive. It's not going to be your only car. No one's saved up their whole life to buy a Mono and sold their Toyota Yaris and their old 91 Range Rover and, got out a second mortgage to buy a Mono R. No, you've got a Ferrari and a Porsche and I'll buy a Mono R too. It's that kind of person, isn't it? So you're never going to buy one instead of something else.
What's your favorite road going supercar at the moment? Okay, I'm going to do a couple of eras. Let's just say current in production. Ish, give or take a year or whatever.
It's quite a generic, boring answer, but I don't know. One that I would own and keep would maybe be like a Ferrari Pista or something, because I just love them. If it wasn't current era, then I would have the 458 Speciale over that.
Why?
If it's a track car that I've got to use on the road that's road legal, GT3 RS every time. Over the GT2 RS, because it's just too much power in that car. But yeah, there's too many cars now to make those decisions, because the BAC Mono R is mega on a tight, twisty track, not as fun on a long track. Senna's amazing around Silverstone, but then there's a lot of understeer around small tracks in a Senna, and it's quite numb. So that's why I'd go more GT3 RS / Pista around about that kind of mark.
You can do everything.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah. I still prefer the Speciale to the Pista. I say that I haven't driven a Pista, just from my being around them and whatnot, it's the noise for me. I can't.
And the gears are too short ratioed and come up too quick in the Pista. Okay. It's literally mind-boggling. You're having to just flick around on the paddles all day long, and there's not quite as much of emotion through the car as there is with a Speciale, which I just love. They've always been kind of the Ferrari I love.
Yeah, they're very cool. Right, well, last time you were on the podcast, I asked you 5 questions, I think, and I thought we'd revisit a couple of them to see if your thoughts have changed.
Okay.
5-car garage, unlimited value, got to fit into your life.
5-car garage, unlimited value. I
You can have race cars
can have race cars.
if you want, yeah. But you've got to.
I'll all be race cars now.
But these are you're only 5 cars, so you would have to have a daily.
Okay.
Or a car to drive
The
daily.
thing is, I've never dailied an RS6, but I don't know if you were the same, but I got my S4 Avant because I couldn't afford an RS6. But that was actually the dream Avant that I wanted. But I don't know if I like the new RS6. I think I like the look of it, but it does sound a bit like a hairdryer. Maybe I haven't heard the right ones.
And it's massive.
So it would still be, am I allowed to say as my daily, a similar-ish to like an RS6 or an RS4, that kind of a...
Yeah.
Yeah, probably that, or I have the same guilty pleasure as Chris Harris, which is I kind of like a G-Wagon, which seems I almost feel guilty saying it, and I don't know why, because there's nothing wrong with it, but I just feel like it shouldn't be a driver's car, but it is.
I really like the G-Wagon. Of all the SUVs, I think it's possibly my favorite, but I couldn't see myself buying one.
Yeah.
Which is a weird string of things to say.
No, I know what you mean. To
finalize with but I just don't see myself as a G-Wagon person. That's the bit of it.
But I think you don't see yourself as a G-Wagon person because of the stigma attached to it due to the other owners. So really, if we just kill off all the other owners, you can have one.
100%, and I would. They're so cool.
Okay, so I've already messed up this game because I've said RS4/6/G-Wagon as my daily. Then I would have a Group C Sauber.
Ooh.
I would have a Audi R18 e-tron Le Mans car, a 2011 Formula One car, probably Red Bull.
Yeah.
I don't know. What am I up to? That's 4. Wow. Damn it. And a go-kart. Now, what would be my 5th one? Maybe a gearbox car or... No, I've got to have the Mustang. And this is going to be... I bet these 5, I bet the only similar one was the Mustang. I'd still have Eleanor. Yeah. What do you remember my last 5? What were my last 5?
I don't remember. I can't remember.
They were exactly the same, so I'm a very stable character.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure they were not exactly the same. But it is interesting how sometimes just that question evolves so much on just a daily basis when you're, or even just right now, you're I'm locked down. I can't use any of these things. So you're either some track item or comfy cruise around town or whatever. Who knows?
It's so hard to choose. And cars back in the day used to, I mean, when we were younger and even before we were born, you'd come out with a couple of cars a year, and now it's a couple of cars a week. It's unbelievable. It's just you can't keep up with it. There's
a special run of 500 over 500 grand cars multiple times a year now.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
But I think the buying world is slowing down on
Definitely.
it, for sure. Just going you're making too many cars, guys. We're not going to buy them.
Pistas are 20 grand under list now, aren't they?
I imagine easily.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's way more. But
I wouldn't be surprised if that was about right.
Yeah, I saw something the other day that I can't believe has finally gone under list as well. I can't remember what it was now. I think someone was trying to sell is it a Lamborghini Sian or something? Someone was trying to sell that.
Oh, that's one of those crazy body kit Lambos.
Not even being delivered yet, and someone was, or maybe there's only a few out yet, and they're already giving the whole Senna signs of, because it's a shame Sennas are worth nothing now, are they, compared to what they were?
Yeah, but look at them.
See, I don't mind them. A lot of people, well, I am definitely in the minority. Most people hate them, and I hated the launch color. Whoever did that was an idiot. But in all black from above, as long as you parachute into your car daily from the top of your mansion, then you're fine. But it's a shame. I
really enjoyed driving it. I haven't driven one on track. I would like to drive one on track.
Yeah.
And that changed my opinion of the car quite a lot. I just got out of it and was well, this is damn cool. And then I looked at it and was it still looks like shit. You just can't, because you can have a P1. A P1 looks amazing.
P1 is timeless. Don't get me wrong, I'm not crazy. A P1 is way better looking, but I still find the Senna, I find it cool in an attractive, an attractive way, in the way that Formula One cars look cool, even though they're bending around the regulations sometimes with a slightly ugly nose, in that kind of way. So
From
yeah,
a performance point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if you can only drive one car for the rest of your life, and you're allowed a £500 banger on the side. Now, whether you would want to put anyone else in your £500 banger is questionable, but them's the rules.
Sometimes it's times like this where I wish I had a huge chart in front of me of all the cars. There'll be cars I'm not even thinking of that could be like perfect for it. But I'm literally looking around now at like some of my like model cars and stuff. I'm trying to like find out which one I like. Probably a Speciale. I'll just go with that because I love them.
Okay, cool. Most undervalued car at the moment?
Senna, probably. How much is Senna's now? Like 400k?
I doubt it.
Are they not
but they
that
might
low?
be. But they're between 400 and 600.
Okay.
How much is a 765 LT?
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, actually, 720s are probably the most undervalued car, aren't they?
Oh, well, yeah, they're cheap. They're like 130 something.
Yeah, and I hear
not that many miles.
I hear stories of people with their 570 that have had them a couple of years that are being offered like 60k for their car, and I'm like, oh my God. As in from the dealer to sell for 80 or whatever. But that's a great car. I mean, when the 570 first launched, I did the advert for that car and the 600 and a few of the other McLarens, and I work closely with McLaren. I think they make amazing cars. It's a shame that they have the issues they do. But when the 570 launched, 570 Spider, sorry. So at this point, the 720 already existed. 675 I'd driven every single car that I'd ever made. The 570 Spider came out, and I hadn't even driven the 570 for their advert yet. And I was driving this around Barcelona doing filming. I'm like, you do not need to go half the speed on the road. This thing up to, let's say, 150, it was a closed off road, is the same as the 720 and that feels it on the road. Has great boot space. It's a soft top. It's an amazing color. This particular one, the build quality was fine and great on it. I know they can be mixed with others. And I was like, this is an amazing car. And now that they're worth like 1/3 of what it was that day when I drove it, that's an amazing car for the money.
That is. I remember it was Supercars Club Arabia trip. And someone had a 570 on it. And we did an Autobahn run of sorts. And he came back in and he was like, GPS 211.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
Mental. So at Le Mans, McLaren hired, obviously I was racing at the time, so I wasn't doing any work for them. They hired some of my co-workers and friends, Ollie Milroy and a couple of the other guys. They were doing passenger laps for McLaren guests as professional drivers who weren't in that particular race. And at the end, they did a filming lap, and the 570 was going quicker than the 720 at the end of the straight because it had less drag, and it didn't have that spoiler kit version on, which makes it very scary under the brakes. It's not the best for braking 570. But as a top speed, off-the-shelf first supercar / sports car. No, it's supercar, isn't it? It's not sports car.
Absolutely a supercar. It's got to be.
Yeah, that is mental. And now if you can get one for 60, 70, 80k, then Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, that's like a low-spec RS6 or something, isn't it?
Yeah. One of them with a warranty. You're like, oh, wow. This is a serious bit of kit. Yeah, because I think there was one point I definitely saw a drag race between a 675 and maybe a 570. And they were like the same speed up until like 150 or something. Like, why does it matter? And
even the 600 LT, which is one of my favorite McLarens, behind the 675, which will always be my favorite, behind the P1, which will always be my favorite. The 600 LT, which I briefly had for about half a year, that car, I recently did a drag race with some friends, and he had a Pista, Aventador, SVJ, 4-wheel drive, and a few other bits and bobs. 600 LT won. It won 8 out of 10 drag races. And I think for his particular video, he really wanted the Pista to win. So the Pista did win 2 of them. But that 600 LT, everyone assumed it would be 3rd out of the 5. Yeah. You know, there was a 1,200 horsepower GTR. That was 5th out of 5. Yeah. You know, it's like mad what they can do now.
It is mad. And I remember when the 12C came out, and it was like 12C versus 458. And then there started to be like videos appear of 12Cs like walking 458s, just like absolutely mullering them. And I was like, what? I don't understand. Like, they're not that much horsepower. It's like, yeah, but they weigh a lot less and they've got a lot more power. Like,
they've made such an impressive car. And I know they've had problems with reliability and so on and so forth. And we won't go into that too much. But I love the brand. I really, really want it to succeed. And you know, I hope people forget the troubles they have with their road cars now, in the same way that people have completely forgotten the fact that Honda was the worst possible engine in F1 ever, and last year was the only engine manufacturer to not have a failure the whole year, and they were the only engine manufacturer to win other than Mercedes. And the same way that McLaren used to have Alonso in last place, and now third in the constructors or whatever they were last year. So it's unbelievably amazing what they've done with the F1 team, and I hope they do that with the road car.
Yeah, I hope so. Like Ferraris 10 years ago, everyone was like, they just fall apart.
Yeah.
And then now they're pretty much bulletproof.
Yeah. They used to have the old Maserati shitty gearboxes in, didn't they? You change gear, you wait an hour.
Still
in the old 599s were like that. Yeah, exactly. You're right, actually. I didn't even think about that. And now they're amazing. Yeah.
Have you seen that? Have you come across one of those new Maseratis yet? MC20, is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, no, I haven't. I know a friend who's got one in order, but I've not seen one in the flesh.
I thought it was an interesting. It's like an interesting car that I'm not interested in at all. That sounds weird. Like
it doesn't
do anything for me.
That comes out of me for it. No,
but
to me, I don't know why I see this when I see the car. I see it as like a step up for like Alfa Romeo, but like a step down for Maserati. It's like if it was like a new Alfa Romeo supercar, it would be quite cool. And they're stepping into a slightly different market. But I don't know. I don't see it. It doesn't attract. It doesn't excite me, that car.
I don't know why you would buy that. I don't know how much it costs. Have you any idea how much it costs? I feel like it's similar to like 488. It might be a bit less. Then why would you not buy the Ferrari? You're going to buy the Ferrari.
And I know it's a different type of clientele who buy these cars, because I kind of any fancy car you see that I have, I'm normally leasing. I'm very open about it. You know, I'm not unfortunately not doing that well enough yet to own these depreciating cars, but I don't see any new car other than the super expensive kind of like, you know, high-end supercars to hypercars upwards, where obviously you have to buy them, you don't lease it, and if you're that wealthy, it doesn't matter anyway. But any new car around that Maserati style money that comes out, why buy it new?
I just don't understand.
Why would you buy it new? Because if you've got enough money to buy it new, you're probably not going to keep it for 5 years plus anyway. So why buy it new instead of lease it? And then if you are going to lease it, buy it second hand and blah, 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 blah. It's like there's so many new cars coming out that the first-hand market for cars is getting very scary. Like, who are you really targeting? It's almost like you either need to make a £3 million Regera and you will sell it no problem at all, or you need to make a very, very affordable hatchback. Because half of these hatchbacks that I've been testing, like when I do like Love Cars or something like that, which we did with ITV, they come with everything: Apple CarPlay, heated seats, you know,
Bluetooth, whatever.
Yeah, and they're cheap as chips, you know, relatively speaking, for what you get compared to back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, you buy a Ferrari Pista, you have to spend $1,500 to get Apple CarPlay in, and you come in and they go done.
Yeah, I agree. I look at all of those cars, that bracket of like, it's a big bracket. Let's say like a 150 to 300. That bracket of car and the new cars that come out in that space. And me being me, I'm like, well, the only one that's even close to that I would remotely consider buying would be like a GT3 or GT3 RS or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, I look at all the new Ferraris. I quite like the F8. I think it's a cool looking thing. But I would not buy that new. Absolutely no way. The McLaren, no way in hell would I buy that new. Like, just look at all of those cars and go, I would never buy them new. That seems like the worst decision you could ever make in your life. I'll just buy a 2-year-old 720S for 140 grand. Like, it's as fast or faster than any of these other cars. Great thing, blah, blah, blah. Like, and you've just saved yourself 100 grand.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And I actually get, maybe it's because I'm not paying attention enough to the Ferrari side of the car market, because I feel like I know my Porsches now. I didn't used to be a Porsche guy, but I very much am now. I know my old Ferraris. I know my semi-classic modern style Ferraris, like 90s Ferraris. But now, like, I don't know, like I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference in the F8 and the SF90. Is the SF90 meant to be more like a LaFerrari expensive, quicker car? Or is the F8 quicker?
The F8 is your turbocharged supercar.
So it's a 488.
Yes, it's the next it's the 488 plus
Okay.
reshell. It's literally another evolution of the 488 platform. But the SF90 is the 1,000 horsepower hybrid.
Right. But it
But it's
looks
literally looks like an F8 ish with some hybrid.
yeah.
And it weighs the extra 300 kilos that requires, or
Right.
200.
Because it's weird because you look at a LaFerrari, and if no one knew anything about cars, Niall, my fiance, will be able to look at the LaFerrari and go, "That's the special one, isn't it?" You'd be like, "Yeah." Whereas I don't look at the SF90, and it's beautiful, and it looks cool, and it looks a little bit better than maybe the F8. I don't know, maybe in some angles, whatever. But the F8 to me looks just there's not a huge difference.
And I think that the SF90, it's not that LAF level
Right.
in price.
So it sits in between.
It's like 4 something.
See, that's a weird pricing for a. Mind you, they just have the
But it's a
client.
production car. It's not limited in any way, shape, or form.
It's not.
It's like an F8.
Okay, is it? Are they targeting a market? Is it the highest powered production car, non-limited Ferrari ever?
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's faster than a LAF, which is actually an older car now, but around Fiorano or whatever. I don't know. I look at that car and go, yes, it's an interesting technology experience or whatever, but it must be 1,800 kilos.
Yeah.
And I just don't really care about driving a high performance car that's 1,800 kilos.
I guess if you own a company like Ferrari, you only see revenue spikes when you release and sell new cars. You don't make much money from secondhand. You make a lot of money from parts and from championships, granted, because they, you smash them up. They cost a lot of money. But for them, they must sit down. They must look at all the types of cars they've got: hypercar, production car, limited car. And they go, what haven't we done yet? Okay, there's the gap. Now we'll build a car. They don't build a car first. They find the gap in the market, build a car based on that, because they need to sell money. They need to sell cars to make money.
Yeah. And people buy it. Like I've just said I'm not the person that's going out and buying a new F8. Although if you look at all the brands, the one to buy new of that price bracket probably is the Ferrari, because it holds its value the best. Or did historically held their value
historically, definitely. And to be honest, even what's worrying, and I might be wrong in saying this, I'm trying to think about back in the day when I was young and karting, and I would see these expensive cars. I seem to remember that back in the day, in pretty much most of our lifetime until the kind of YouTube car era of the last kind of 5 to 10 years, normally buying a car was a depreciating asset, full stop. Pretty much any car other than your top echelon Ferrari, Aston Martin DB5 or whatever it was back in the day. You knew, even back then you knew you would be okay buying those cars. Now, with pistas even not be going down in value, it seems like we've definitely turned a corner 2 years ago or a year ago, haven't we, where the appreciating era in the last 10 years, which was insane for a long time, has gone for pretty much every brand. And now, worryingly, it's even happening to the exclusive cars. Like a pista shouldn't be down in value, because I think even 20 years ago, if you bought or 15 years ago, if you bought a 599 Scaglietti or 599 GTO, you bought that thinking this won't go down in value, and it didn't. Whereas now you're buying a pista and it is going down in value.
But they made how many pistas? I don't know. A lot.
Did they make 500 hard tops and 500 soft tops, or is it more than that?
Pistas is like thousands.
Oh, is it?
And thousands and thousands. It's like, I think they made a lot of speciales. I think they made like 3,000 speciales. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 5,000 pieces. The amount of people I know that were offered.
Did they say it was going to be limited?
Yeah, it's limited, but limited to what?
Right.
They never put a number on it. And I think it was this sort of era of like 600 LT, that sort of situation where people are going, this is the special one, but it's kind of the production one now.
Yeah, that's what worried me. I got out of my 600 LT quite quickly for that, because I was stretching myself getting it anyway. Yeah. I got the second or third one in the UK, so I was like, oh, great. And then very quickly I was like, being a test driver from McLaren, I knew what was coming as well. So then I was like, I thought I had the special one. Yeah. And then it was like, oh no, it's 500 hard tops and 500 soft tops, not 500 total. And then I think it ended up being even more than that. There was
like 100 at Goodwood. Like press cars.
Yeah.
No, it's yeah. Right. Final question. Most interesting car to you at the moment?
Most interesting car at the moment. Mm, It would, if they were going to make that Bugatti Bolide thing into an FXX style track car, even if it doesn't go WC, even if they make a few of them, so I can see them on track and take someone out to dinner and drug them and use the car, that would be the one I want to drive. I'm going to stick to that one, even if there's only one made. I need to get my bum in that car.
Someone's driving that car. I think it's going to go. It will appear on a track, probably a completely private track day, but you never know. You might get invited. So
maybe not to Bugatti. I've not been involved in any Bugatti stuff yet, but that would.
But it'll be an owner. It won't be them, will it?
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So you need to find out who's bought it.
Need to get Larry to buy it. He's got a lot of cool FXX style cars. I'll tell him, look, well done on the SSC record, but you need to buy this Bugatti now.
yeah. It's not as fast as you thought it was, but this car can do a 3:14 round Le Mans apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can do a 3:16 in it, so it's fine.
Exactly. You only need to be a couple of seconds off pro pace, and you'll be going very fast.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It's been good to catch up, and I will hopefully see you out and about at some point when we're all allowed out. And
hopefully we can get back on a track soon. And I still need to see the not necessarily on track, but just in person. I still need to see the F40 at some point one day. Never seen it.
Oh well, that's totally doable.
Yeah,
that's totally doable at some point. It's not at home at the moment, but
cool.
I'm sure it will be. One of the things I've said to myself this year is get out and use it or get rid of it about all the cars.
Yeah. Go for use it for now.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll aim to do that. But anyway, good to see you. Thanks very much.
You too.